Hello, everyone. GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is time for your Friday recap, and we are coming at you with our regular now, Gavin Purcell, Fonky Donk, here in the house. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing pretty well. It's Friday, and we've lived through another week in the wonderful world of cryptocurrencies.
That we have. I think this is going to be a fun episode because it's going to be a nice blend of eye roll and like, what the hell are we doing in this space? But also some hope. Like, I think there are reasons to feel good. And we'll talk about those as well. Before we get to all of that, though, we do need to hear a word from our incredible sponsors who do make this show possible. So thank you to our sponsors. Y'all know, I think one of the most powerful use cases for NFTs are loyalty programs, which is why I'm so excited about our latest partner, GALXE. That's GALXE. GALXE is a leading platform for building a Web3 community. It is a no-code, plug-and-play solution to create task-based campaigns and loyalty programs. With over 67 million users, GALXE has worked with folks like Optimism, Polygon, Arbitrum, and more than 2,100 other partners with reward-based loyalty programs of their own. And I'm especially excited to announce their latest product offering, GALXE Mint List. Mint List enables NFT projects to issue allow lists based on different user profiles. It's free to use, and projects can then take advantage of GALXE's other offerings, like Task and Quest, which incentivize audience growth and user retention in the long term. Go beyond the mint and keep using GALXE's infrastructure to reward users through on and off-chain actions. GALXE's goal is to help projects grow in an authentic way and help them retain their users and communities over the long haul. And as a user, you can start contributing to your favorite Web3 communities today, joining allow lists through Mint List and earning rewards, NFTs, oats, tokens, and points. Go to galaxy.com right now, that's GALXE.com right now, or click the link in the show notes to get started. Your Web3 community is waiting. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OPENSEA, the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OPENSEA user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copy mint protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OPENSEA, you use OPENSEA, but did you know that OPENSEA now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OPENSEA. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OPENSEA right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. All right, let's start where we always do. A little vibes check. How you feeling, Gav? How you feeling on NFTs specifically?
So I feel actually okay. Now, this is like kind of like 2 parts. In one part, like what's been interesting is to look at the Blur or OpenSea charts and seeing different projects actually doing okay for the first time and seeing volume come back, which is something that we had really not seen for like the last month. I think there was a period of time where it really felt like NFTs had died. It reminded me a little bit of December 2021, which sounds crazy because that was like, you know, peak crypto times, but it was also when ETH was at $4,700, which, Jesus, can you imagine that world again? Like, we're in a different place. But at that time, ETH was peaking so fast and NFTs were just, it was just too expensive to buy NFTs, right? So you were in this weird world. And now we've had this kind of like flat ETH for a while, which is always a pretty good sign for NFTs. But we went through this whole shitcoin meta, and now finally it feels like the right sort of volume is coming back to NFTs. You're not seeing a lot of like the quick hit fast projects that are making people flip money, which is okay, I think. Like, it feels like maybe there's a maturing a little bit of what's going on. I mean, we talked a little bit about captains in our OPJ Pro newsletter this week. Captains are almost 10 ETH right now, which obviously is getting pumped based on the meme coin, but like that's pretty interesting. I think Opepen and Jack Butcher stuff has come back in a really interesting way. So like the market has returned, and maybe this is the word I hate to say is, but like maybe there is a maturity that's going on right now, and maybe there's something going on.
Nothing lasts forever, my friend. I would not plant a flag on the we're a maturing market like island just yet. But you're right. I mean, well, it's interesting. You say like we don't have the quick hit projects coming up where you flip for a quick buck, which is obviously true. I mean, I guess you have a little bit of that in shitcoin still, but it's faded. But you have Nakamigos, which was like the seminal quick hit, quick flip thing that you and I were into for a hot minute there. Not that I ever owned any, but I was like observing and kind of into it. It had a little pop, though. I think that was also on the back of like a Ben.eth thing.
Yeah. Ben.eth has become like a cartoon character now, and I think that like what's fascinating about it is, I haven't followed PSYOP enough to know what's going on, but I know there's a third coin now in some form or another, and I think that's something else. I just think the stories that could be told out of this space are fascinating. I hope somebody out there, it's hard because I was going to say, like, I hope somebody's making a show about all this stuff, but it's like not easy. Like when you think about having to learn all this stuff, I mean, we're in the middle of it every week, and like there's a lot of stories and you can't get people to open up. It's also like why ZachXBT, shout out to ZachXBT, who we love here, who does the deep work, is so good and valuable for this place. Because like when I say this place, I mean crypto, Twitter, or NFTs, because like you need those people that are telling the stories of what's actually happening, because there's two kind of versions of this. One is the hype and one is like what's really happening. And I think it's a hard thing to discern sometimes.
Well, I was going to make a joke of like, we own a media company, Gavin. You know, like
that's true. We do. Yeah, exactly.
We are folks who could do this. I'm not saying we will, but I do. I've always loved that idea as well. I mean, CoffeeZilla does a little bit of it.
A little bit.
Exceptionally well.
He's very good at it. He's very
good
at
it. He
is
the multi-medium ZachXBT, or I guess just different medium ZachXBT in terms of when he tells the stories and does them visually on YouTube and makes them very entertaining. You mentioned Memeland or Memecoin, which we've talked about, I think, every week on the show for a while now. Like you said, our last week's, we had a deep dive on it. That was pretty good, I think, kind of going through everything last week. I will say, so the update is that we did seem to get confirmation with a lowercase c that it's coming soonish. They keep putting probably, like all of the Memeland materials are like, meme token is coming, parentheses, probably, right?
Yeah,
and they had a long thread about how they're trying to do it really right, and they're here for the long term, so they want to get all the legalities correct. Obviously, we talked to Ray Chan a couple months ago, and he was talking about how he's got an advantage being in Hong Kong, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and some of what's happening in Asia. But so he doesn't have to be quite as regulatorily concerned as perhaps other projects. But of course, a huge part of their audience is US based, and they do need to think about how they're going to handle the US holders. And so that's really any delays, quote unquote. Not that I would even necessarily say this is a delay because he never promised a certain deadline, like are on the backs of something like that. I will say they did a fun thing. Did you see he tweeted out like meme token now or whatever, and you went to the website and you could play that little tap the coins game. I played like a lot of that earlier this morning. Like I was on there just like tapping the coins really, really into it. I was like, damn, I wish my wallet was connected and that this was something where I could maybe get rewarded for later for playing all of this.
I know, it's so funny. Game. They do such a good job of like the dumb little stuff like that. And by the way, that's the training of being on the internet for 10 years, right? This is where like, it's where Memeland succeeds, is that they understand how to make little moments on the internet. Like, and that's a funny thing, because you think about other projects where like, again, we'll talk about Doodles, and Doodles is doing really interesting stuff, but like Doodles went away for like 6 months, do you know what I mean? Essentially in the world of like in public. What Ray understands is this like little drip drops of stuff, right? Little snippets of things. Even the way he leaks information, right? Like he's strategically leaking information in ways to kind of keep the conversation going. And this is like what I really believe. And again, this gets to that piece we wrote in the Pro newsletter, is that like part of Ray's ability and Memeland's ability is to really be able to release stuff in a way that kind of drags people along, but they don't feel like they're being dragged along. Like they're excited to be part of the process, which is kind of cool.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, you know, Kevin Rose got into some hot water this weekend for things he said on a Twitter space. I think the backlash to him, for lack of a better term, was totally overblown, but that's a separate debate. I know not everyone agrees with me, but I'm like, he was just rambling at a Twitter space. Like it was ridiculous. But anyways, one of the things he said was he kind of compared Pudgy's Amazon plushie release to the VeeFriends toy release. Like VeeFriends had toys come out in Macy's, and Pudgy's had obviously just recently did their plushie thing with Amazon. And he was saying, I didn't listen to the whole space, so I don't have this fully in context, but my impression was that he was making a point about almost like the arbitrariness of the space of like, well, VeeFriends did this thing and they released toys in Macy's and it didn't do anything, and then they, Pudgy's did it, and oh my gosh, it went gangbusters, and what do you know? And I think that's a misreading, because I could fully explain to you why the Pudgy's thing felt bigger and different. And it's actually the same thing here, which is that VeeFriends had done a little snake game while you waited for something. Yeah. And I played that too. Like, I love all these little casual, like, stupid games that pop out. I'm not a gamer at all, but I'll play those little things for a little while. So VeeFriends had done something very similar. But it doesn't feel the same as Memeland doing it. I think because VeeFriends, and people know I'm a VeeFriends holder, I'm a big fan of VeeFriends, but it is more diffuse. Like, they feel a little bit more scattershot. Yep. And they're just like throwing darts places a little bit more. And it's like, okay, what's the cohesiveness here? Whereas both Pudgy's and Memeland, you get the sense that you're driving to a destination, and that the founders have a bit more of a clear sense of that destination, or a particular skill set. In the case of a Luca Netz, who can sell toys on the internet because he's done it before quite a bit, or Ray with, what he knows about driving internet culture and behavior. And so these little moments feel different than when other projects do them.
I think the other thing I thought when you said that is one of the things that Frank said in the interview you had with him, which was like one of their missions with DeGods is to super serve their community, right? Yeah. And like when you say super serve a community, that might mean 1,000 different things depending on your community. And I think what Frank, Ray, and Luca all kind of understand is like, how do we super serve our community so that we understand fully our community and we know what's going on? I mean, with Kevin, the hard thing is, I think Kevin is never going to be able to get out of, and I think he understands this, but he's never going to be able to get out of the original hype cycle, right? Because like he's been very clear, like, look, you can't control the fact that birds went to where they went and the timing of the thing. And I think that it's going to be very, very hard to let people know that their thing that was worth $120,000 is now worth $7,000, right?
You can somewhat control the price, like not fully, of course. Like market dynamics will make something pump or fall, and it is outside of the control. But there's not no control.
No, and by the way, this is what I was saying before too, is that community thing. It's like, how do you super serve your community? Right. And I think in some ways, the community that Ray and Luca and Frank have all developed around this real sense of like these kind of fervent fan community. And what's interesting with the Proof community is it's a slightly different thing, right? Like it's like the art community just doesn't have that same sort of like super excited hype thing around. They might have around specific artists, but like it's hard to like coalesce that group of people in the same way that you can with Ray can do with memes, or what Pudgy's can do with like, kids' toys, but also just the fact of his story, Luca's story of bringing the thing back from the dead, essentially. Or Frank, who's just like this kind of master carnival barker in the world of DeGods. Like those are stories that can really like, you can galvanize a community around that. It's much harder. I think the road that Kevin has is much harder, right? Because the art world is really interesting, and you and I both love it. And obviously Zeneca, we talked to last time about this, is really deep on it, but like, it's not the same. It's not vibes in the same way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we'll see. They have enough runway. I think the play. My sense is that not based on anything they've said publicly, but is that there's still probably a product play that they would like to make, and that's Kevin's background. Yeah. You mentioned Doodles earlier. I'm gonna switch us real quick. I'm honestly gonna pat myself on the back for this one, only because I have been a defender of Doodles for a while through all of the hate that Doodles gets, and I understand it. And I think Doodles has not done what you just described, which is super serve their community, or at least make their community feel super served. Like it doesn't matter if I feel like, well, people are like, Doodles has actually done a lot for Doodles holders. If it's not in the way that the holders want it, which what the holders want are tweets, then it sort of doesn't matter. Like, listen to the holders and what they want. Anyway, we all know this. They're trying to turn it around. They've been doing regular Twitter spaces. Okay, putting that aside, obviously the big news out of Doodles this week was their partnership with Camp, which is a retail shopping but also immersive experience that has there's a couple of these stores that exist, I think, in New York and LA, and I don't know if there's, I guess not one in Miami, but there are a couple places around the country, mostly in big metropolitan areas. They've partnered with Disney before. They have a Disney Encanto experience that exists in New York. Oh, I think there's one in Atlanta. They have a Disney one that they do in Atlanta. In any case, if you haven't looked at these, go online and check them out. You can see pictures from them. They're really cool. It does feel like just a mini store that you might find in Disney World, right? If you've been to Disney World and you go, and the camera's out.
No.
I swapped, for anybody watching who's like annoyed that this is the third week in a row that we've been dealing with this, I did swap out parts on my camera setup, and apparently it hasn't helped. We're just going to power through, and I'm not going to say anything about it because I'm sick of talking about this. So if you've been to Disney World, you know that there are, you can go into Minnie Mouse's house or Cinderella's house or insert here. And these are retail experiences that are like that, where you're touring a house that you might find in Encanto, but you also are shopping. And so this is perfect for a collaboration for Doodles. It's going to be set up in Austin starting this summer. They've been teasing things like this for a little while. I would say Julian even teased it a bit during the conversation that I had with him in Miami for the last OPJ tour event. Reminder, we have another Miami event happening this coming Monday, June 5th, which is going to be fun in Miami at the Hodler Gallery with Avery Akinani and Max Kalla. I love this.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
What do you think, Av?
So I think what's interesting is if you don't know Camp is a really interesting, relatively new brand, and you see it here in LA and you see it in New York, and it is very like kind of high end, like it's almost like Kith. We talked about like if you know what Kith is, and Imaginary Friends did a partnership with Kith. It's like it's kind of cool person store, but this is a little bit more like cool, family store, and it's a really smart move. It feels like the right sort of initial step to do something like this because it gets it in front of like a specific audience. I think that there's a world where this really works well for them because what it's going to do is get it in front of, relatively affluent buyers. You're going to have them see this art. This is not a crypto play, right? This is not an NFT play. This is really much more of a expanding the brand play. And I think it's really good. I think it's smart.
I think it's great.
I think it makes sense.
I think of Kith as more streetwear-y, and maybe I don't know the Camp brand well enough outside of like their activations.
Oh no, it is.
Camp is very streetwear-y. Got
it.
No.
Sorry. Kith is very streetwear-y, but right. What I think is there's a specific type of store, and if you've lived in LA and New York, you kind of know this, which is like, I would say like the rich cool kids store. We'll put it that way, right? And like my version, what I think of Camp is like Kith for the parents. It's like the people who used to buy Kith when Britney Spears and Paris Hilton were buying stuff at Kith now go to Camp because they have 5 to 10 year olds and like that's the place they now shop at. Okay. Like it's that kind of vibe.
You made the really good point, I think, that this feels like it's in line with the kind of stuff that David Horvath talks about. Yep. So people know we reference David a lot on this show. He founded Ugly Dolls and has a great Substack where he talks about branding and how to build a really smart brand. And one of the things he's very focused on when he describes things is like where your stuff gets seen is very important.
Yes.
So he talks a lot about museum stores, and it's if somebody discovers you at the MoMA gift shop, it's a very different feeling than discovering you at Macy's. And those nuances really matter for a brand. So, and again, I'm stealing Gavin's point here. You said this yesterday, but like having Doodles affiliated with Camp, I think is really smart. It also reminds me, because Luca Netz had come on the show and said, he was talking about how he thinks Pudgy's is the most universal IP, and you could be in mainland China or you could be in the middle of Ohio and a pudgy penguin could resonate for you and could work. And I brought up Doodles as another one that feels like it has potential and appeal because it's so family friendly. And I think he called Doodles more metropolitan. He had a word that I thought was really spot on in diagnosing that.
Which is what this is,
and
I think,
exactly,
right?
I think this is Doodles leaning into what their vibe already is, which is metropolitan families. So when you say like the people who shopped at Kith now shop at Camp, I'm like, wow, you're leaning into the right target audience with this, in addition to the vibe feeling cool. So Doodles has always been good at IRL activations, and I've talked about this. This is why I'm patting myself on the back, because I do think I have been like, hey guys, y'all are missing that Doodles has this special sauce when it comes to IRL activations and the Golden Wolf acquisition and things like that. I do think that there was a lot they could do there, and so I'm very happy with this.
I think both
me and the community.
Yeah, I think it could really work well for them. The tricky thing is the TAM is a much smaller TAM than what Pudgy's are talking about, right? You're talking about a much smaller overall market for this, but like David says, this is getting it in front of the right people, I think, right? Like I think this feels like the right move for them, especially it would not work for them to do. I mean, honestly, I'm not even sure if the VeeFriends Macy deal worked, period, really necessarily, right? Like this idea of getting yourself broad right away. What this is really good about is it's slowly inching towards something different, right? Like, and if they have, which I would imagine Julian, who's a very smart guy, has a rollout calendar over the rest of the, 2023 and then beyond, it's like, this is the first step. And then they start doing more media and they start doing more like animation stuff with Golden Wolf. Like there's a pathway where you can see these becoming a much bigger brand, which I know has been their whole goal all along. And you're right. It's an interesting opposite take compared to Pudgy's Memeland or Frank, which is doing all this stuff in the immediate sense and super serving their audience. I still don't think like Doodles is like super serving their audience, but it's a different path, as you've been saying all along. And I think probably gets to an interesting place, you know, on a little bit slower timeline than these other ones do.
In other, I would call it good news this week, Mercedes announced that they are going to have their first core collection come out. I believe it's 1,000 NFTs that are going to be on Ethereum. It's going to be a Dutch auction, and it comes out June 7th. And they've released some of the art, I believe. I don't think it's all of it, but we've gotten like glimpses of art. Do you know? We haven't seen all of them, have we?
I don't
have we
think
seen
so.
all 1,000
Not yet.
pieces?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's very cool. They're doing a generative art drop.
Yep.
And all of it has, you can sense the car theme, but it's abstract.
Yes.
This is not Porsche or Lambo, like giving you a straight up car, right? It is giving you like, here's a propeller in like funky colors, kind of swirling around.
Yep.
And look, we talked about Mercedes last week. I've been pretty impressed with how they've rolled out so far. And I think that having the three tiers, the core tier, the periphery tier, and there's one in between those two, I believe, where they specifically outlined like, hey, we're going to have 3 different types of activations we're going to do. And we're going to set expectations up front about what they each are, core being the actual, as the name implies, core Mercedes NFTs. I think that's great to set expectations like that the way they have. I think they're going to do 3 core drops is what they're set up for out the gate, is I believe what they had said. And this is the first of them. June 7th is when it'll go live. I genuinely think this is awesome. I'm probably not going to bid on them because I generally, for a variety of reasons, like stay out of this kind of stuff. It makes me feel like I can be more objective, whatever. Not that I, honestly, when I buy these things, my podcast is so much more important to me than like the 2 NFTs I ever end up holding from a particular collection, but still. But in any case, I'm pretty excited about it. What do you think?
I think it's really interesting. And look, I think that this is a slightly different path to brands coming into the space, which I appreciate, right? Like I think they partnered with Fingerprints DAO and like they're doing interesting stuff. And like they know that generative art means something to this space, right?
Yes.
And I think that's really interesting. And they know that there's a world where if they pick the right stuff and they partner with a project and with an artist, and like if they can get people excited about the generative art, this is like a really interesting pathway to, hey, we want to be in this space. We are going to help provide funding to an interesting artist and provide something that we can partner with them. It's a really, I mean, again, we've talked about this before, but it feels like somebody at Mercedes, and I know there's a woman who's associated with this who's been a fan of our show and has been thankful for what we've been saying about them. But like, it feels like somebody spent a long time thinking about this, which thank God, brands, thank God, right? Because like this makes it feel like, oh, this is an interesting new brand take. I mean, there have been brands that have done things like this before, but this is a major brand doing this and being public about it. To me, this is a really smart entry point, right? Because it feels that way.
It's also, I like that it's not as literal, like which is also partly what makes it feel thoughtful, because it's like Mercedes is a luxury brand.
Yeah.
Generative art for NFTs, generative art is luxury. Not all of it, right? You've got generative PFPs that haven't done well, right? Sure. And that was, you know, you can have 10,000 whatever. I don't want to seals. I'm not trying to call out Sappy Seals or anybody in particular. I'm just saying like you can do 10,000 generative NFTs and it's like whatever. But generative art and the art blocks thing is luxury, like Mercedes. And so doing something like this feels like you're tapping into the why or like a broader theme about your brand, as opposed to taking this very literal approach of like, we are brand, we give you car, we are car brand, here is car.
Here's a Fidenza with little Mercedes going around in a circle.
Yeah, exactly. and that's not to knock anything. I mean, we wrote a long piece comparing Lambo and Porsche, and I give credit to both those teams. I think there's things both those teams have done well and things both those teams have done not as well or could improve on, whatever. They've all got their own paths to sow. But I appreciate the more abstract thinking we're getting here that feels more authentic.
like Mad Men in some ways, right? When you think about like Don Draper sitting in a room is like, what does the Mercedes customer want in NFTs? They want art that is interesting. They don't care about a car NFT. They want something that's going to make them feel like they're inside their Mercedes. What does it feel like? And that's what this is a little bit, but that works. That is branding. That is what is interesting about the advertising business, because the advertising business and branding in general tries to tap into the feeling that you want to have when you're associated with a brand. And to me, this is the perfect version of that. I want to feel like a luxury owner of something interesting. It's a direct connection to the idea, as you said, of luxury generative art. Feels like, that feels like the right move for this. I think it's really smart, and I applaud them for it.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. Okay, I'm going to transition us to, I wouldn't call it bad news, but I guess kind of just the what are we doing in this space news, and then we're going to end on a high note again. So in the what are we doing in this space news, okay, it's best summarized by Song a Day Man, Jonathan Mann's latest song. I don't know which day it came out.
Stop sending fucking money randomly to asshole. Stop sending fucking money randomly to asshole. Stop sending fucking money, your fucking money. Stop sending fucking money, your fucking money. People say crypto's a scam and you all prove them right. Or the shadow part of money is not just out in the light. Either way, I'm disappointed and I'm feeling fucking sick, because the talented are starving while the idiots get rich.
It's very catchy as a song. My fiance was like, what are you listening to? It's a really, I really like it. And I was like, I'm listening to this satire of the NFT space, because we are in this era, and we've obviously always been, scams have always proliferated, bad actors have always proliferated. This is nothing new, except it does feel like, percentage-wise, a higher percentage of what's happening right now relative to the overall space, because things are down so much from their highs, is just like these random people literally just sending money to wallets.
Yes. It's insane. It's truly insane. First of all, shout out to Song a Day Man, who was an intern for me in 2004. Jonathan, I love you. You're awesome. He's the best. Jonathan was one of the two people who got me into the NFT space, along with Brian Brinkman. Here's my thing in general. There was one turning point, which was, people sending money to a random person. And then, I think it really was the PSYOP kind of the beginning of all this. And that suddenly that became a thing. This has gone so far. I don't know if I told you this already, but like a couple of weeks ago, I put out a tweet and I said, hey, everybody, I'm going to start a shitcoin called Funky, $Funky. And, but I'm going to decide the distribution by how nice you can compliment me. And people started complimenting me. They knew it was a joke. And then suddenly there were a lot of people complimenting me who I didn't know. And I was like, oh no. And I added a tweet. It's like, just so everybody's clear, this is a joke. And they were all disappointed. They're like, oh, really? Man, I can't believe it. I was like, this is how crazy we've gotten. This is how crazy we've gotten, is the idea that and I think this goes back to the dream of the quick hit, right? This is that's all this is. It's like the get rich quick move. And I think everybody sees this as they saw people get really rich really fast on Pepe and other things. And now it was always diminishing returns, right? It was always going to be diminishing returns. But if you've ever played around in shitcoins, you have to know this. I'm going to say it directly to the camera, it is impossible in the long term or even the medium term to make money in shitcoins unless you are the person that is creating the shitcoin, and that is a very semi-immoral place to be because you're doing conceivably a lot of stuff that feels a little sketchy, or 2, you just get incredibly lucky. And that is kind of it.
So you headed me off by saying that it's sort of immoral. I was going to say, you fucked up, man. Like, you should have gone forward with Fonky. We gotta wrap this whole charade up right now, you know? Go get an island somewhere. Feel free to
send me more compliments. It'll be something really fun.
Mai Tais somewhere.
My problem
pretty.
was I was just saying I was going to give them distro. What I should have said is the amount of money attached to the compliment is how much distro you'll get, and then we'll see what I would have rolled in with. It would have been amazing. God.
No, it is wild. I mean, you had Ben.eth, as you pointed out, starting it with PSYOP, but then you have. I mean, some dude, and look, I don't know the details of this. Maybe he's adding value to the space in some other way in Twitter spaces. But this guy who was like, send me ETH, and when I get $1,500, I'll buy a new iPhone. And then he raised a bunch of money. I mean, like, just the number of people who are just like, here's my wallet address. There was something that was like, you get nothing.eth, and it raised a bunch of money. I mean, it's getting out of hand. Yeah. And I mean, look, people can do what they want with their money. It's a free world, and if this is how you want to play your life, play it. Just know you're gambling. I guess it's like the age old.
Know you're gambling, and also like I think the other thing we should talk briefly about is like, you know, there's a new possible token from Rhett, the guy that made Turbo. Yeah. We had Rhett on the show, and like it just was one of those things where I saw that I was like, gosh, I don't know why you do this, right? Or why you'd want to do this, because I think there's a level of like, look, we all been in this space in this world where you create a project and then it kind of like maybe it doesn't do what you want to do, but Rhett Turbo's still really big, and like the idea of like coming out with something this quick is like you have to kind of understand how it makes people feel, right? Because there's a lot of people. You mean I think if Kevin came out with another project right now that was like not a Moonbirds project, like he wouldn't obviously. So let's be clear.
Of course.
But like that's the world that you live in. And I think the tricky thing with shitcoins, I will say this, and I've been following shitcoins for a long time and have lost significant money on shitcoins. In the shitcoin world, there is a sense overall that like there's way less attachment to the thing because people kind of expect it to go up and then go down. Like there is this idea that like, oh, well, I didn't get out on the right world on that one, but the next one I could. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like that's kind of how the shitcoin world works. And there's a lot of people that are very sketchy in that background. I mean, well, before I'm taking one quick story about my shitcoin experience, which I think I've said, but I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. I was in the shitcoin world in 2021 and fell into it because I was really interested in the space and kind of missed a lot of the best NFTs at that time because I was in the shitcoin world in the summer of 2021. There was a shitcoin I got very into as a puzzle coin at the time, which means that like you kind of have to figure out what the puzzle is. It's like a kind of like a weird meta at the time was like, oh, you have to do this and this and this. And the guy is really good at making puzzles. Turns out when I got it all rugged about 2 months in and he was like, I don't know what I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. He's like had this whole story where it all went away. It turns out that guy was the first 6 people in the Telegram. He was talking to himself, started the entire process of the conversation. He played 6 people and then continued those conversations throughout all 2 months as the Telegram got to 1,000, 2,000 people. And we all were just like flabbergasted at the end. It was like, A, it was like impressive. It's like, how do you do this sort of thing? But B, that's what happens in this world. So just know going into this that like,
how did you find out?
It was a long story, but like basically, I won't tell who the guy is because it's like it's a long story. But like we were all digging in on these puzzles, right? And part of the thing when you do a puzzle token is you have all these people who are very smart. There were some very smart people that were involved because he was making really cool puzzles. And when it all started to kind of collapse, we started to like hear things about different stuff. And then somebody else said something. This guy had been involved in something before, and it all unraveled. And then I remember the day I was scanning all the way back to the Telegram channel, which is really annoying if you've been on Telegram. I'm not a big fan of Telegram, but you have to try to go all the way back. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, he started this conversation and it was like all him. Anyway, this is the world you're getting into in shitcoin. So just know it's not new. It's been a super kind of crazy world for a while. And I think that you just have to understand this is what that world is. It is, when you talk about the Wild West of crypto, I feel like shitcoins are like the town that people shouldn't go to.
Yeah.
In some ways,
like,
you know, it's like whoa,
it's dark
too
and
wild.
seedy.
Yeah, it's too wild.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like Times Square in the 70s, you know?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like it's like weird porn somewhere, like, you know. Well, the thing, just to wrap, because obviously we've been Rhett has been kind of friend of the pod. We were big fans of Turbo. I'm still a fan of Turbo because of what felt so wholesome. Well, what was sort of strange to me about his thread was, so he's sort of just bringing the same... He's running the same playbook, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm playing a little bit of catch up on the story, but it was like, the circus is in town. We're all clowns. Enjoy the show. As an art AI social experiment, I've asked ChatGPT if it can create $1 billion coin or artwork. Follow along.
Yeah,
that was the first thread, which is what he had done with Turbo was had ChatGPT create a meme coin. And then he says, make sure to read the whole thread before sending ETH to clownbag.eth.
Right.
And so...
I mean, the one thing that's different this time is it says very clearly, like, there's no expectations on this, right? Like, so he's trying to very clearly...
Well, I felt like he did that with Turbo, though.
I think so,
and that's
too.
why I was going to say that...
It's so weird to me.
It's totally... And that's why the proof comparison isn't... Again, obviously, Kevin would never start a new project right now, but it's not even comparable because I didn't feel like he promised anything with Turbo. In fact, he was like very explicit, even on our podcast, of being like, hey, if you want to get this thing listed on Coinbase, go out and do it. Like, I fair distributed this. Like, this is not my thing explicitly. So... yeah, whatever. We'll see how it all plays out. It feels like a weird move for sure. In this continuing spirit of this weird moment in time we're in where people are just doing strange things, this Pixel Penguins rug, which took over crypto Twitter for a hot sec. What the heck, man? So let me give people context for this in case anybody somehow missed the story. There's this account, Hope Exist 1. Feel like I have seen this account for a long time. Like, I never followed it, but like I've been aware of this account, I think, for quite a long time.
It or something, yeah.
Yeah, like just like around in comments, whatever. It now appears that, so the story around Hope Exist, which I did not know, to be clear, but is apparently that it's run by this younger woman who is an artist who does pixel art, who has cancer.
Right.
And I guess as part of the story had even lost an eye to cancer. And then the doctors wanted to take a second eye, but she said no because she wants to be able to make her art, which you read that now in the hindsight, which is that this is all a scam. And you're like, well, that felt a little heavy-handed, but okay.
Yeah.
And she or he or whoever this person actually is has been running this long con, pretending to be an artist, posting their artwork on influential people's tweets to say like, hey, notice me, and actually gotten some traction that way. So enter Andrew Wang into the story, who really is a sweetheart, like a genuinely good-hearted, earnest human being who I guess sees Hope Exists art on his thread at some point, starts to collect their work, he believes, which now part of this is that all of the work was, it seems, stolen or fake as well. Fake as in this wasn't somebody... an artist making this, a different artist probably made all of this work and it was being stolen by Hope Exist or whoever was behind that account. Started collecting their work and even went so far as to converse with Hope Exist, talked to their quote unquote art teacher, who Hope Exist is, was pretending or is, we don't know, I guess, but like an Asian woman. And he had a whole long conversation in Chinese, he says, with the art teacher of this girl, and the art teacher was saying, oh, she's so talented, it breaks my heart, like, I cry for her, whatever. But again, to Andrew's credit, like literally had people keep saying, oh, he's done no due diligence, which doesn't, I'm like, well, no, like talking to an art teacher for an hour in Chinese feels like due diligence. And so this past weekend, I suppose it was, whatever, Hope Exist is trending. They're dropping a collection. Andrew sees this. He's tweeted about her in the past. So he lends literally in his words, stakes his whole reputation, his whole rep on defending this woman and talking about her art. Her collection sold out shortly after that. And I don't know, some number of hours later, it turns out this whole thing is probably a long socially engineered scam.
What is fascinating to me about this is that I think of this as a metaphor for what the real world interacts with crypto as, right? And I think this is one thing that I've come to. We talked about shitcoins, but like I've got this radar now up on my face all the time when I look at NFTs, when I look at anything crypto, and my initial thought is before I do anything, what's going to happen with this? Is it a scam? What does it look like? Because that is how many times I've been through this. Andrew, as you said, I think genuinely is a sweet person. I have not met him in person, but I've been on a couple spaces with him. He seems like the the representative of, let's call it, mainstream America when you come to the space. He knows a lot about the space, obviously. He's been in it for a while, and he's been through this. But a couple times now, Andrew has been caught into these situations where it feels like he has now, like, there was the art gobblers thing that happened a while ago too, right? Where it's like he kind of doesn't really fully understand what sort of world he's jumping into. And this is, again, knows the space, but gets like naive in some ways around this. Now, this one is so fascinating because it just goes to show you, there's a joke in the world about like, ape holders are the ones that always get hacked, right? And when you say hacking is social engineering more than anything else. It's like somebody is convincing somebody to kind of do a deal or something, and a lot of that is about how trust develops and all that sort of thing. This is a very sophisticated, long-running thing. And the truth of the matter is I feel so bad for Andrew because, like, I read that thread where he talks about this before he realized it was a scam. And he genuinely felt for this person, you know what
Absolutely.
I mean? He genuinely cared and like wanted to use the positive force of what he's built up, what this space can do to make a difference for somebody, because there is something really special about what can be, like you talk about Kickstarter. There was this whole world of Kickstarters before NFTs, or GoFundMes that actually did make a huge difference in people's lives. And like, what's cool about this space is like, hey, you get a piece of art in some form with this. And the Pixel Penguins were fine. They weren't like incredible, but like, the idea of feeling altruistic to try to like be part of something, that is a cool feeling. So it's a bummer that it happens.
This is my biggest conflict with this is you're absolutely right to say that the two quote unquote scandals that Andrew Wang has been caught up in both come down to him being, I would say, big-hearted and trusting, maybe.
Yes.
And I'm so conflicted as to if I want that beaten out of him or not. Like, I don't. Like, I love that about Andrew.
Yeah.
And yet, it just breaks my heart. And I will defend Andrew to the end. I have met him in person several times. I really think he is so genuine and so earnest. And also, there was a lot of confusion around the art gobblers thing. Like, he actually didn't know how all of it was going to be portrayed or used. Like, which, again, you got to ask more questions, it turns out, right? But, like, I think this was hard. And to see the comments, to see the way that people then, not everybody, there's lots of lovely comments, but then people will come after him and say horrible things. And you're like, God, man, this is such a sweetheart. And I just, look, don't say you're staking your rep on something unless you've like literally hugged the person in person and been to the cancer ward, I guess. But it really breaks my heart. And look, and I feel bad for the people who spend a bunch of money on Pixel Penguins because they saw Andrew Wang say something about it. And but that's on them too, right? Like, everyone, do your own research always. I'm re-listening to the book Bad Blood, which is about Theranos. I'm obsessed with Theranos, and it's not just because I get told I look like Elizabeth Holmes a lot, which I do, and I do look like Elizabeth Holmes, I suppose.
I never thought of that before, but there is a little bit of that there. You should start wearing a black turtleneck around.
When I wear turtlenecks, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you really look like Elizabeth Holmes." I'm like, "Thanks so much, love that for me on so many levels." But anyways, I just have always been fascinated by the Theranos story, and you had very smart people who were completely taken in by that whole situation.
Major VCs who have been like incredibly successful VCs, right?
And what happens so often is people assume the person ahead of them has done the due diligence.
Yes.
And the truth is, it doesn't matter how many followers you have, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how many wins you've had in the past. Never assume that person has done their own due diligence properly. Do not bandwagon jump because there's somebody ahead of you that you think is so smart. They must have done they must know what they're talking about. Like, you just always gotta, and I feel like, I from a young age being interested in some of these things like the Theranos is, I feel like I just like that's kind of burned into me. Not that I won't make a mistake someday, but it's like I'm not jumping in because somebody else that I like or follow or whatever has jumped into something, because you have no idea what game they're playing at.
And by the way, it's a tricky space because, like, I, as somebody who's been in the world of, NFTs now for a couple of years, have definitely bought into things that I thought were really cool and then talked about them and then, in public on my Funky Dog candle, and then found out later, fuck, this sucks because I talked about something that clearly I thought was cool, the initial thing. And most of the time when I'm doing it, it's like, oh, this is a weird, random, art thing that's kind of cool. And then I realize after the fact, like, oh, there's like semi-nefarious back here. And most of the time it's just people that like are just like trying to make a quick buck. In this instance, the thing that was so shocking was the length of time that this happened. And, it's like the catfishing world. Like it really is a thing that happens. Like people get catfished on stuff and it takes forever.
The last thing I'll say on this, and I'm not going to remember all the details, so I don't want to harp on it, but there was a social engineering attempted hack that I remember reading about probably a year ago. It was like they convinced this guy that they were connected to NASA very effectively.
Wow.
Like, and he was involved in some like rocket, whatever. Again, this is where the details start to elude me. But I read this thread of this guy describing, and he didn't fall for it in the end because he got skeptical because they wanted it to connect to his wallet to something, and he would only do it on his like on his like burner wallet.
Yeah.
But this was somebody who had been in his Discord for like months, very reliably talking about, and I just remember reading that thread and being terrified. I mean, like, I would have fallen for this hook, line, and sinker. Like, I would have been done. And that was like a turning point for me of being like steel yourself, Carly.
Yeah.
Like, everything online can be a lie. So anyway, just be careful out there, folks. Let's end on a positive note.
Please bring something good.
I don't want to make too much of it, but I do think there are a number of things happening. I think we could be poised for a crypto bull run, which may not be even good for NFTs.
Time to put it in writing, everybody. Carly Riley says it's time for a bull run.
There are two things that are worth flagging here. One is you've got the Bitcoin halving that'll come in April of 2024. Yep. I heard this from JC, who I was on our team, who I'm sure got it from reliable places. Very smart. Ideas, yeah. Of like, apparently usually the Bitcoin starts running about 9 months before the halving happens. We're I think 11 months out right now. So like we're starting to get to the point where we might start seeing some activity as a result of the halving. And then, so that's interesting. And then you have things moving in Asia. So to give a little context here, you had a white paper come out of Beijing that people like CZ of Binance and Justin Sun of Tron and I think Yatsui of Animoca have been excited by and tweeting about and like signaling it's a good sign. So it's a Web3 white paper. What's interesting about it is it doesn't explicitly really talk about crypto. Like it doesn't really mention Bitcoin or Ethereum, which are cryptocurrencies right now are still banned in mainland China. But it does talk about NFTs and use cases for Web3, and it's very positive on the opportunities for Web3 writ large without going too specific on any particular cryptocurrency. So what I would say about that is, again, people smarter than I who know more about China than I have been excited about this and think it could be a signal of a loosening of restrictions in China and a enthusiasm on the part of the Chinese government, because this came out of the Chinese government around Web3. I find it, and this is totally me, again, not a China expert saying this, like I find it interesting they didn't call out any specific cryptocurrencies. It makes me a little nervous. It feels like the CCP will want to control things very tightly. So like always game for more people getting into crypto, but it does make me nervous. I don't know. It could be interesting to see what happens in terms of specifically what this looks like on the part of the CCP. I know you have thoughts on this. I'll pause and then I have a part 2 to all of this. Okay, well,
there's 2 thoughts to this. I have obviously more people involved in crypto for all of us is good, right? And I think when I say good, I mean like the bags go up if there's more money that comes in. And China is a massive business. It is a massive economy now. The downside of this, I think, and I think this is a tricky thing a little bit, is no matter what, I know we live in an international world and crypto's an international space and obviously there's all these people there. The CCP, in my mind, and please don't come after me like CCP fans, maybe you will, but like is a pretty scary government still. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that the thing that they do is, there's a very controlling. They know they know how to control stuff. There's a long history there of how controlling they are. And the thing I will say about this, and I think this is not really economic conspiracy theory. I think it's really legit in some ways, is that the CCP has an interest in undermining the U.S. government in pretty much any way it can, right? Like they are our main superpower rival now. And I think one thing that I hope that America sees, and I think this is going to be an interesting pathway to see like what America does here, because there's a world where if China is doing this because they think it will help undermine the dollar, it's a very big deal, right? Because if they think it will undermine the dollar and they think by getting a bunch of more money into crypto will allow the dollar to be less prominent, I don't even know enough to say this because I'm a liberal arts major and haven't done the research, but like there are many, many, many research places where you can talk about the idea. And Ray Dalio, somebody's talked about this, about the idea that like China and maybe even Saudis and all these other people would love there to be a decoupling of the dollar and not having it be the world currency.
Oh, of course.
This is a pathway to that, conceivably. Absolutely. So I think that's the thing that's a little scary to me as somebody who lives in America and is somebody that like sees what that could do.
Logically, this has always made sense for economies like China, for developing economies, because it does, they're rising powers and we are probably a falling power. And so that logic has always made sense. What's interesting is what China does, right, is they'll kind of loosen the leash and then they'll tighten the leash. That's obviously what they did with their capital markets, with like their entrepreneurs. They let Jack Ma, they let these folks go and get really big and build these massive businesses. And then they said, okay, now we're putting you tightly back on the leash because now it feels like a threat to our power. So I would be shocked if crypto and Web3 aren't similarly wielded by them, which is, okay, let's loosen this up, gain some power, gain an edge over the United States, whatever it looks like. But at some point, it tightens back up, because fundamentally what they don't want is anything that will actually challenge the power of the CCP. And boy, does crypto with its tentacles like it, right? Everywhere. I mean, there's a reason it's banned right now. So I do want to... all of those caveats are important. But the other thing that they did is you had Meebits featured on CCTV. Like it seems like they're leaning further into NFTs in the metaverse than the currency, at least right now. And who knows where this leads ultimately. But that makes sense. I mean, when you look at character culture in Asia, it's powerful. And something like Meebits feels like it makes sense to me as something that you could have an Asian market get behind. And, we've talked about this, of course, with Ray Chan as well. So, I think there could be something interesting happen there. And Meebits had a bit of a bull run. It appears on the back of that specifically. So that is feeding this bull market thing. The other thing is Hong Kong. Which, of course, has sort of a funky relationship to China. They want to be independent. China says Hong Kong is part of China.
Funky is definitely not even strong enough of a word. It's definitely a funky relationship. Yeah, it's super funky, let's say.
I don't know. We're not a political podcast.
No,
I'm trying to avoid any. I'm not trying to get into the debate around Hong Kong sovereignty on this show. Thanks so much. But Hong Kong's really embraced crypto and NFTs, and they are basically starting June 1 open to exchanges getting retail licenses to sell crypto to retailers. So you have a number of exchanges that are looking to get a license so they can start selling cryptocurrency to retail in China, in Hong Kong. Very interesting. That June 1, actually, today as we record this, in theory, I think June 1 is the day it's supposed to
go into public. I think this is all leads into like Hong Kong, Dubai, London. All three of these are economic centers that are going to start sucking away this from America. And I think when you go to that point of like falling power, it's like, okay, well, there is a thing where when you're a falling power, and again, I'm an American, I believe in the country, I am somebody who really wants America to succeed. It is a little scary when you start seeing the way the government is approaching all of this and understanding that this is all moving out offshore now, right? And that's a pretty scary thing in general.
We shall see, but I think this combination of Hong Kong opening up to retail traders on the crypto side, Bitcoin halving coming up, halving. I always think it's halving, but I think it's halving. Halving. I'll be having more Bitcoin, please. In any case, I don't know. And summer, I feel like, is usually a bumpy time, like a bull run time. You had DeFi summer, you had JPEG summer. So I'm feeling happy with my bag.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm really curious to know. The tricky thing versus the last bull run, was that the bull run happened. I still think the one thing that people are underestimating is the impact of what COVID did to everything, right? Like, it's like,
for sure.
I mean, we're still, and when I say everything, I mean, of course, the world changed. But like, I think, there
prices,
was this,
like we had this free money.
Exactly. So it's a slightly different environment, but I still think I don't feel unoptimistic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we've all suffered enough, haven't we, at this point? Like,
I know. Well, the bear case is that the entire economy is going to collapse and commercial real estate is in an absolutely dire state and that there's a recession coming. And if something big and macro like that does hit, I kind of think
even if a macro thing hits, which I think we all have to expect it is, like, I think there was some news out of some big retailers in the last couple of days that the buying habits are changing. I still think, based on this China news and based on other stuff, it's like, the thing I was always curious about this, and at some point we should have some person on the Wednesday show to talk about this, is I really want to know historically, you know, people in the Bitcoin maxis always talk about the idea that, like, look, you can just track it over time and it doesn't matter. And like the having, you know, it's coming and you know it's going to go up. And I just want to know, like, how real is that, right? And I think we'll find out, right? And we'll see.
No, but, like, it's definitely real.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, you can go back to early Bitcoin. There is always a pump in advance of the Bitcoin halving.
Right.
Now, how long, like, you know, I'm somebody else would be able to speak better to that. But I remember in 2016, when I started to get into crypto, being aware of this dynamic, because 2016, there was a halving. Or I really got into it in like 2017, and the halving had happened in 2016, and I remember tracking that. And then 2020, you had a pump for the halving. And so, like, it's definitely a real dynamic. What I can't speak to is, like, how enduring the pump ends up being. And to your point, like, environments are always different and changing, and who knows. So, but I'm optimistic. I'm going to hold on to that feeling until it gets shoved in my face. And with that, folks, have a great weekend.
Yeah, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye, y'all.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.